The lights of Raven Stadium burned far past their scheduled shutdown, standing like tall, electric sentinels over the empty bleachers. It was nearly midnight when the last echoes of drills faded across the turf, drifting into the dark corners of Baltimore's old concrete bowl. The 7 senior players, men in their early 20s, returning as assistant mentors for off-season training, lingered behind after the younger team left. They were exhausted, sweat-soaked, still riding the thrill of competition even though practice had ended hours before. Adrian Cole, 22, the unofficial captain of the group, tossed his helmet toward the sidelines and stretched his shoulders. "One last lap," he said with a grin that always managed to provoke the others into doing more than necessary. Derek Mays, 21, shook his head. "You keep running. I plan to survive tonight." He leaned down to retie his sneakers, pretending his legs weren't trembling. Elijah Brandt, 23, usually quiet, pointed toward the giant scoreboard. "Did any of you notice that earlier? The clock reset by itself. Twice." "Faulty wiring," Adrian said. "The school board coughs dust, not money." But there was something off that night, something subtle, something the 7 felt but could not explain. The field seemed too quiet. Even the crickets by the chain-link fence had gone mute. A wind that should have been warm felt oddly cold as it skimmed across their necks. "All right," Adrian said, wiping sweat from his brow. "Let's hit the locker room. I'm starving." "Derek, you still owe us those subs from Harbor Point." Derek groaned. "You people treat me like I'm made of cash." The group laughed, but the humor felt thin, as if it were trying to cover something invisible pressing against them. They walked together toward the tunnel leading beneath the bleachers. Raven Stadium was older than most of the neighborhoods around it, a relic from the 1960s, built with more concrete than sense. The tunnel grated with every step, their footsteps echoing like distant gunshots. Still, they joked. They teased. They talked about life, graduation, jobs, relationships, the looming sense that adulthood was no longer creeping toward them but sprinting. And then the joke stopped abruptly. Halfway down the tunnel, Adrian halted. "Do you hear that?" The others fell silent. A faint tapping echoed from ahead, steady, measured, metallic. Like someone drumming on a locker. Elijah frowned. "No one else is here. Coach Landers left at 10. "Probably the custodians," Derek said, though his voice didn't sound convinced. The tapping continued. 3 taps. A pause. 3 taps again. It almost sounded intentional. They kept walking, but slower now. The tunnel lights flickered overhead, buzzing like irritated flies. As they reached the locker room door, the tapping stopped instantly, as if whoever, or whatever, had been making it realized it was no longer alone. Adrian pushed the door open. Silence. The locker room was exactly as they'd left it earlier in the evening, benches cluttered with their bags, shoulder pads stacked along the walls, helmets glittering under fluorescent lights. Nothing seemed disturbed. But the room felt wrong. Cold. Too cold. Victor Hayes, 20, rubbed his arms. "Did they crank the AC or something?" "No," Elijah said. "The system shuts off at 10. Isaiah Turner, 24, stepped further inside. "Maybe someone left a door open." But no door was open. No window either. There was simply a coldness that seemed to settle beneath their skin, seeping into bone. They began moving toward their lockers, talking lightly again, though now with forced enthusiasm. Adrian bent to pick up his water bottle, and froze. He stared at the floor, confused. "Guys, does this look wet to you?" A dark trail, thin, meandering, ran along the tiles. It wasn't water. It wasn't blood. It shimmered faintly like oil. The line stretched from the showers to the center of the room, stopping near the drain. Derek knelt beside it. "What the hell is this?" Before anyone could offer a theory, the lights snapped off. Total darkness swallowed them. Someone cursed. Someone else stumbled into a bench. The air grew colder still, freezing, suffocating. Then came the sound. A low, unhuman hum, vibrating through the walls, through the lockers, through the 7 men themselves. It wasn't loud, but it felt close. Too close. Adrian fumbled for his phone. "Everyone stay together," he whispered. But when his flashlight flicked on, its beam hit only an empty bench. His teammates were gone. Their bags, uniforms, shoes, everything, still lay exactly where they had been moments before. But the 7 players had vanished. The hum stopped. The locker room fell silent again. And Adrian Cole, standing alone in the beam of his own trembling flashlight, realized he was the last person left inside Raven Stadium that night. The silence in the locker room felt living, like a creature holding its breath. Adrian Cole stood alone, his pulse hammering so loudly he was certain the whole stadium could hear it. One blink ago, his friends were beside him. One blink later, he was surrounded by their abandoned belongings, staring at the same cold tiles they had all been standing on seconds earlier. He steadied his phone's flashlight and forced himself to speak. Elijah? Derek? Victor? His voice came out smaller than he intended. Isaiah? Come on, guys. Enough. He waited. Nothing answered. Not even the hum that had nearly cracked the air open moments before. For a moment, just a moment, Adrian considered running out of the locker room, out of the stadium, out of Baltimore entirely. But every instinct he had trained for years as an athlete pressed him forward instead. People didn't simply evaporate. Something had happened, and he needed to understand what. He picked up Derek's duffel bag, heavy with untouched equipment. Elijah's phone sat plugged into a charger, the screen glowing with a half-written message to his girlfriend. Victor's wallet lay on the floor, open, driver's license visible. The locker room was a museum of the lives that were supposed to walk out of it. Guys, Adrian muttered, if this is some twisted prank, it's not funny. But he knew, deep down, that this was no prank. He knelt near the strange shimmering trail. It hadn't faded. In fact, it looked darker now, thicker. Almost like it was slowly soaking into the floor. Adrian leaned closer. A faint, metallic scent hovered above it, nothing like blood, more like cold metal left out in the rain. He reached toward it but stopped short. Something about it warned him not to touch. He stood and moved slowly around the room, shining his flashlight into every corner. Showers, empty. Office door, locked. Emergency exit, untouched. Nothing. No sign anyone had run, struggled, or even moved. Then he noticed it. The drain in the center of the room, small, circular, harmless, was vibrating. Very slightly. A soft tremor, like something beneath it was shivering. Adrian stepped back. No way. Before he could investigate further, the stadium lights outside flickered through the small high window. One by one, the tall floodlights over the field powered down, plunging the world beyond the locker room into total blackness. Another surge of cold swept in, brushing past him like a person squeezing by. Adrian grabbed his bag and bolted into the hallway. The tunnel outside was even darker than the locker room. His phone's flashlight barely cut through the heavy air. The silence was suffocating. Even the city beyond the stadium seemed void of sound. No distant cars, no sirens, no hum of street lamps. Think, Adrian whispered to himself. Think. He forced himself to replay the moments before the blackout. The tapping. The trail. The hum. The cold. It didn't fit anything logical. It didn't even fit anything supernatural he'd heard in stories. Yet the truth stood, 7 young men had disappeared within arm's reach. Adrian's breathing steadied enough for him to walk. Each step echoed violently in the tunnel. When he reached the end and stepped out onto the field, he froze again. The stadium was pitch black. No lights. No moon. No stars. But the field wasn't empty. Rows of seats, thousands of them, were filled. Completely filled. With silhouettes. Not people. Not exactly. They were motionless. They didn't breathe or shift. They simply were. Adrian raised the flashlight. The beam washed over a section of figures, and every visible head snapped toward him in unison. He stumbled back, choking on his breath. The figures had no faces, only smooth expanses where features should be. Their bodies resembled human outlines wrapped in thick frosting of shadow. They sat as though watching a game frozen in time. The flashlight flickered. Not now, Adrian hissed. As if triggered by his voice, the entire stadium inhaled, one collective, impossible breath. The figures leaned forward, their empty faces stretched toward him. Adrian turned and ran. He sprinted back toward the locker room tunnel, lungs burning, heart slamming, legs screaming. Behind him, the stadium exhaled. A long, deep sound, like a massive sigh through hollow lungs, chased him up the tunnel. He didn't stop until he reached the main exit. He burst through the stadium gates and collapsed onto the gravel outside, gasping. The night air was warm again. The streetlights hummed. The world looked painfully normal. Baltimore at midnight. But the stadium behind him stood silent, its gates clanging shut on their own. Adrian fumbled for his phone. He had one bar of service. He dialed 911. Before the call connected, a notification flashed across his screen. A new text message. From Elijah. Just one attachment. A diagram of a football play, but shaped unmistakably like a map, leading back into Raven Stadium. Adrian stared at the image on his phone, his breath trapped somewhere between his ribs and his throat. The diagram wasn't a typical route or play, they all knew those shapes by heart. This was different. The curved arcs, the intersecting lines, the small X at the end, it looked like a crude map. And the final mark was placed exactly where he stood, the entrance to Raven Stadium. Elijah, he whispered, what are you trying to tell me? He opened the message thread. The timestamp read 12:14 a.m. He had been alone in the locker room at that exact time. His thumb hovered over, call back, but fear made him hesitate. If the text came from Elijah's phone, it didn't guarantee Elijah had sent it. He glanced behind him. The stadium loomed like a silent monument, its concrete walls stretching into the sky. Every instinct screamed at him to run home, call the police, and never return. But the thought of abandoning his teammates, his brothers, made his stomach twist. He hit call back. 1 ring. 2 rings. 3. A crackling sound burst through the receiver, like static hit by lightning. Then, faint beneath the distortion, a voice. Familiar, strained, desperate. Adrian, don't, come. Elijah. Elijah, where are you? They're not human, don't trust. The call ended abruptly. No, no. Adrian redialed, but the phone flashed call failed. His blood iced again, not from fear now, but from a sudden bitter determination. If Elijah was alive, he wasn't leaving him behind. Adrian stood and took a few unsteady steps toward the stadium gate. The heavy metal bars were locked, but as he approached, the padlock clicked once, softly, and slid open on its own. This is insane, Adrian muttered, but he pushed the gate anyway. It opened as smoothly as if someone invisible had greased every hinge. He stepped back inside. The air shifted again, colder, heavier, damp. But not the unnatural cold of the locker room. This felt like the air before rain. The scent was unmistakable, wet earth, charged sky. Except the night was clear, with stars scattered like fine dust across the darkness. Adrian's phone buzzed. A new message. He nearly dropped the device. Not from Elijah this time. Unknown number, turn around. Slowly, heart pounding, Adrian did. At first he saw nothing. Then a faint flicker of blue light illuminated the stadium's massive screen above the field. It blinked once, twice, then flooded the entire stadium with a ghostly glow. What now? Adrian whispered. The metal bleachers around him creaked. He shined his flashlight upward, nothing sat on them this time. No silhouettes. No faceless watchers. Just rows of empty benches stretching into darkness. The giant screen crackled again. A video began to play. Thunder roared. Lightning crashed across the stadium, illuminating a field soaked in rain. Wind lashed the goalposts. Sheets of water cascaded from the bleachers. But the storm wasn't outside. It wasn't happening in Baltimore. It was happening inside the video. The footage zoomed in, to the locker room entrance. The same entrance Adrian had walked through earlier. 7 figures ran inside, drenched, shouting to one another. Adrian leaned closer. No way. It was them. Elijah. Derek. Isaiah. Victor. All 7 sprinting through a storm that did not exist. He watched himself standing in the tunnel, head bowed, helmet in hand, except he wasn't alone. Behind him, something massive and shadowed moved in the distorted rain. A tall figure, humanoid but limp, as though hung from invisible wires, drifting toward him like a puppet underwater. Adrian felt a sharp sting of nausea. This was recorded tonight, he whispered. But, the sky was clear. He checked the timestamp in the corner. 11:53 p.m. 6 minutes before he saw his friends last. Thunder cracked through the speakers so loudly he flinched. Except, he heard thunder around him too. Real thunder. Not from the speakers. Adrian looked up. The sky above the stadium was no longer clear. Clouds had materialized silently overhead, thick, rolling, bruised clouds illuminated from within, as though lightning was trapped inside them. Cold rain began falling, soft drops at first, then dozens, then a torrent. No, this is impossible. He ran for cover beneath the bleachers. Lightning struck the field with a blinding white flash. The metal beneath his hands vibrated violently. The stadium lights snapped on all at once, buzzing like angry wasps. Another message buzzed onto his phone. Unknown number, you weren't supposed to see that. Adrian's throat closed with dread. He typed with shaking hands, who are you? Where are my friends? A moment passed. Then, unknown number, find the map. They left it for you. Before the storm started. Lightning cracked again, so close he felt the air ripple. Adrian lifted his head. The storm on the giant screen? The storm now roaring above him. The storm Elijah had warned him about? They weren't separate. Something, and someone, had forced the stadium into two different versions of reality. And Adrian was standing where they collided. He tightened his grip on his dripping phone. If a map existed, he had to find it. Before the storm swallowed him too. Adrian wiped rain from his face, though it did little good. The storm was relentless now, pounding the metal bleachers like an army of fists. The giant stadium screen continued to flicker with the impossible footage, his teammates trapped inside a storm that shouldn't exist. A storm that had now bled into reality. Lightning flashed again, revealing the stadium gates shaking violently, though no wind touched them. He forced himself to breathe steadily. Find the map. Whoever sent the message, whatever sent it, seemed to know exactly what was happening. And if the 7 players had left a clue, he had no choice but to search. He stepped out from under the bleachers and ran toward the locker room tunnel. Water spilled down the concrete steps like a waterfall. Thunder groaned overhead, rolling like a massive creature waking from sleep. Just as he reached the tunnel entrance, his phone buzzed again. Not from the unknown number. From his mother. He froze. Her message read, Adrian, where are you? Parents are panicking. Everyone just got a group text from the boys' numbers. He swallowed hard and opened the attached image. 7 text messages. All sent simultaneously. All containing diagrams, routes, plays, formations, but when placed side by side, they formed a single image. A map. A full one. He stared at it, rainwater dripping from his chin. The map was unmistakable. It wasn't Baltimore. It was Raven Stadium. And the final mark was a red circle placed beneath the field itself. His phone buzzed again. This time, his mother called. He answered instantly. Mom. Adrian. Where are you? Parents are saying the boys are missing, the school is closed, and police aren't answering. What is going on? Are you safe? Her voice cracked under the strain. I'm at the stadium. He had to force the words out. Mom, Elijah, Derek, all of them, they're gone. Her breath caught. What do you mean gone? They vanished. Right in front of me. Mom, I don't know how to explain this. Something is wrong here. Something big. Leave now, she said, her voice trembling. Please. Adrian, listen to me. Something is happening in the neighborhood. People are saying the boys' phones are still sending messages on their own, plays that look like directions. They're sending them to everyone. Even strangers. Adrian felt his stomach twist. What? Why strangers? I don't know, she whispered. But people are scared. Thunder boomed overhead so loudly he dropped to one knee, covering his head. Mom, he gasped, I have to go. No, you come home right now. He ended the call. Not because he wanted to, but because he couldn't let her voice be the last thing he heard if something grabbed him next. He returned to the map she'd sent. The lines converged beneath the field, right at the 50-yard line, dead center. He zoomed in. There was a faint rectangle beneath the turf markings. An outline of something hidden. A room? A tunnel? A door? A vibration in the ground beneath his feet made him look up. The field itself was shifting. Bubbling, almost. As though something massive beneath the turf was breathing. The white lines rippled. The goalposts swayed though no wind touched them. Then, a crack shot across the field, splitting the 50-yard line perfectly in half. Water from the storm poured into the widening seam. Adrian's instinct screamed, don't go down there. But Elijah's distorted voice echoed in his skull, "They're not human." That meant the 7 were still alive. Somewhere. He stepped toward the field. Just as he reached the edge of the turf, another phone buzz went off. Not his. It came from the ground to his left. He found Isaiah's phone lying in the grass, screen cracked, still lit. A new message appeared across the glitching display. "Isaiah, we didn't choose this. Don't trust the coach." Adrian's breath vanished. The coach? Coach Landers? The man who had trained them since freshman year? Before he could process the betrayal implied in those 4 words, the ground beneath him lurched. The crack in the field widened violently, splitting open like a mouth. A gust of icy air roared upward, blowing Adrian's hood back. From deep below the field, faint voices rose with the wind. Shouting, echoing, calling for help. Adrian recognized them instantly. "Elijah," he screamed into the chasm. "Derek. Victor." The voices grew louder for a moment, then twisted into something else. A chorus of whispers. 100 voices speaking at once, overlapping, chanting something he couldn't understand. Another buzz. He looked at Isaiah's phone. A new message. From Coach Landers. "Adrian. Step away from the field. You're not supposed to be here tonight." Lightning struck so close the turf hissed. Adrian stared down into the widening chasm. The voices continued to rise. The storm raged like a living thing. The coach was lying. He knew it. With every ounce of fear and determination tangled inside him, Adrian stepped toward the crack. And the field swallowed him. The fall felt endless, yet lasted only a second. Adrian hit a slope of wet soil, sliding downward into darkness. Mud smeared his arms and soaked through his shirt, the cold biting at him like teeth. He grabbed at roots jutting from the tunnel walls, slowing himself enough to avoid smashing into the jagged rocks below. When he finally came to a stop, breath heaving, the first thing he noticed was the silence. Not the silence of an empty place. The silence of something waiting. The air smelled earthy, metallic, older than the stadium above by decades. Adrian wiped mud from his hands and forced his flashlight on. The beam flickered once but held. He was standing in what looked like a man-made tunnel, reinforced with beams and rusted bolts. The ground was smooth, almost worn down by years of footsteps. Ahead, the passage curved slightly, leading deeper beneath the stadium. Adrian swallowed hard. "Okay. This is fine. Perfectly fine." His voice bounced oddly, distorted by the cramped space. He took a careful step forward, and froze. Carved into the dirt wall were markings. Dozens of them. Lines, arrows, loops. Not random scratches. Football routes. The same style diagrams the boys' parents had received. Except these were carved by hand, crudely, desperately. Some lines were broken where the dirt had crumbled, others deeper as though someone had pressed hard while carving, frantic for the message to be seen. Adrian raised his light higher. At the center of the wall was a larger drawing, an elaborate play, looping in on itself like a maze. Except it wasn't a play. Up close, it was obvious. It was a blueprint. A blueprint of Raven Stadium. Hidden beneath the turf, beneath the locker rooms, beneath the concrete, was a structure. A square block of hallways and chambers. And in the deepest corner was a symbol, a circle with 7 lines radiating from it. 7. "Guys, what the hell did you find?" He pulled out his phone. Despite the drop, it still worked. No service, but the map image from earlier was saved. He held it next to the carved wall. The shapes matched exactly. This underground structure wasn't accidental. It wasn't natural. And it wasn't new. He backed away, heart climbing into his throat. If the boys had carved this, they'd been down here long enough to leave a message. But if someone else carved it? A sound echoed down the tunnel. A whispered scrape. Like someone dragging a shoe across stone. Adrian turned off the flashlight instantly and pressed against the wall. Another scrape. Then another. Someone, or something, was walking toward him. He held his breath, counting silently. 1 step. 2 steps. Pause. Then a voice floated through the darkness. Weak. Strained. "Adrian?" His chest tightened. "Elijah?" He flicked his light back on. A figure stumbled into view, soaked, shaking, eyes wide with terror. Elijah Brandt. Older than boys their age normally were in high school, 23, athletic build, now half covered in mud and sweat. Adrian sprinted forward. Elijah! I thought you were. Elijah grabbed his shirt, fingers trembling violently. You shouldn't have come down here. Adrian, they're trying to take us again. They're not letting us leave. Who? What happened? Where are the others? Elijah exhaled shakily. I'll show you. But first, listen. We didn't just find something down here. We were led to it. Adrian frowned. Led by who? Elijah's voice dropped to a whisper. Coach Landers. Adrian stepped back. No. No way. Isaiah sent a text saying not to trust him. But why would the coach? Elijah cut him off. The coach told us there was old storage under the stadium. He said he lost a box of film reels and needed our help recovering them before the school board found out. We followed him. And then, the storm started. Adrian blinked. You mean the storm in the video? Yes. Elijah's eyes shone with fear. It wasn't rain. Adrian, that wasn't weather. That was something breaking through. Something the coach has known about for years. Adrian felt the tunnel sway slightly, as though the earth itself reacted to Elijah's words. Then a distant voice echoed through the passage, amplified strangely by the walls. Boys? Footsteps. Slow. Heavy. Where did you go? Elijah's face drained of color. It's him. Adrian's heartbeat drummed in his ears. We need to hide. No, Elijah whispered. We need to get the others. He pointed deeper into the tunnel. They're at the end. But Adrian, something's wrong with them. They're not the same. Adrian grabbed Elijah's arm. What do you mean? Elijah shook his head, eyes filling with dread. They can hear things we can't. See things we don't want to. And if the coach reaches them before we do. They both froze. A beam of light swept across the tunnel wall behind them. Coach Landers' voice echoed again, kinder this time, almost sing-song. Boys, it's time to finish what we started. Elijah grabbed Adrian's wrist and pulled him deeper into the darkness. And the storm above rumbled like something laughing. The locker room felt colder than usual, too still, too silent, like the air itself was waiting for someone to confess. The police had cordoned off most of Raven Stadium, but they'd allowed the team to gather in the locker room while statements were taken. Officers moved in and out like shadows, murmuring into radios, jotting notes. Every sound echoed. Aiden sat on the bench where Malik had been only hours earlier. His duffel sat at his feet, untouched. His mind churned with impossible questions. Malik didn't collapse on the field. He was attacked. And someone here might have known something. Coach Ramirez was pacing the far side of the room, his jaw clenched, eyes red. A few players whispered. Most just stared ahead in stunned silence, their faces pale under the fluorescent lights. Jenna slipped into the room quietly, still wearing her sideline media badge. She held her phone in one hand, a small camera bag over her shoulder. Aiden shot her a quick glare. No cameras now. She raised her hands. No filming, she whispered. I'm here for you, not a headline. He nodded reluctantly, tension still coiled in his chest. Detective O'Donnell, the lead investigator, stepped into the room. A broad man with a tired face and sharp eyes, he scanned the players like he could read guilt off their jerseys. We're going to continue taking individual statements, he said. We need honesty. Anything unusual tonight, anything, speak up. The way he said anything made Aiden's stomach dip. Coach Ramirez cleared his throat. These boys are shaken. Give them a minute. We don't have a minute, Coach, the detective replied. Not unkindly, but final. Aiden's interview came next. He sat across from O'Donnell in the equipment storage room that had been repurposed into a makeshift interrogation space. The overhead bulb flickered, buzzing like an irritated hornet. Tell me again, O'Donnell began, you didn't see Malik before he went down? No, Aiden said. He was fine. I mean, he was Malik. Focused. Fired up. Normal. Normal, the detective repeated, writing it down. But he never mentioned anyone bothering him? Any conflicts? Anything off? Aiden hesitated. He thought of the shove in practice. The aggressive play. The weird tension. Might have been nothing. Might have been everything. He seemed frustrated lately, Aiden admitted. Not with me. With the team. With something. O'Donnell's eyes lifted. Something? Aiden swallowed. I don't know what. He didn't talk about it. The The detective scribbled again, his expression unreadable. Anything else? Aiden almost said no. Almost. Then, there's something you should know, Aiden said quietly. Malik didn't fall. When we reviewed clips on Jenna's camera, we saw someone shove him. Hard. And he wasn't wearing a uniform. The detective's eyebrow arched. You have this footage? Aiden nodded. O'Donnell's voice sharpened. Show me. Back in the locker room, Jenna pulled up the clip on her camera. Players shifted uneasily as Detective O'Donnell watched the grainy footage frame by frame. Aiden stood beside him, heart thudding. The moment appeared, a figure in dark clothing, slipping behind Malik as he stretched after a play. No number. No jersey. Just a swift, deliberate shove. The detective's face hardened. This wasn't an accident, he said. Aiden felt the room tighten around him. Coach Ramirez exhaled shakily. Who the hell gets onto the field in plain clothes during a championship game? Aiden didn't miss the suspicious glance a few teammates exchanged. He also didn't miss the one player who wouldn't look up at all, Connor Hayes, the backup receiver who always felt overshadowed by Malik. Connor's knee bounced rapidly, his eyes fixed on the floor. O'Donnell noticed too. Mind if we chat outside? He asked Connor. The room went still. Connor swallowed hard, then nodded and followed the detective out of the locker room. As the door swung shut behind them, Jenna whispered to Aiden. Did you see his face? He's hiding something. Aiden stared at the closed door. Electric dread crawled up his spine. He didn't know what Connor knew. But he was suddenly sure of one thing. The lie in this locker room was about to crack open. Detective O'Donnell led Connor into the hallway just outside the locker room. The heavy metal door swung shut, leaving the team in a collective freeze. Aiden could almost feel the tension leaking under the doorframe like smoke. Every player strained to hear what was being said, though the words were muffled, indistinct. Only the tones carried through, O'Donnell's measured and firm, Connor's shaky and defensive. Jenna stood beside Aiden, arms crossed, tapping her finger anxiously on her camera strap. If he's guilty, she whispered, he won't last 2 minutes under questioning. Aiden didn't answer. He wasn't sure Connor was guilty. The guy wasn't Malik's biggest fan, everyone knew that, but he'd never seemed violent. More like perpetually annoyed, not murderous. But tonight had proven you never really knew anyone. After several long minutes, the door cracked open again. Connor stepped inside, but slower, almost dragging his feet. His face was pale, eyes red around the edges. Everyone in the room watched him like he'd grown a second head. Coach Ramirez approached him. You okay, son? Connor flinched. Yeah. I just told him what I know. What you know? Aiden blurted. Then why were you shaking like that? Connor whipped around. Because Malik is lying in a hospital bed and everyone's looking at me like I'm the reason. His voice cracked on the last word. Aiden tensed. Something felt off, not guilt, but fear. The wrong kind of fear. Detective O'Donnell re-entered the locker room, expression unreadable. He closed the door with purpose. All right, he announced. Everyone sit. We're not done. The team obeyed without argument. O'Donnell's eyes swept over them. Connor has told me something important. Something he should have shared earlier. Connor stared at the floor. Aiden leaned in. What did he say? O'Donnell folded his arms. Connor claimed someone else had access to the restricted tunnel below the south bleachers tonight. Someone who wasn't supposed to be at the game. A chill slid down Aiden's spine. Who? Connor swallowed. I saw Malik arguing with someone earlier this week. Off campus. A murmur shot through the room. Who? Coach Ramirez demanded. Connor hesitated, then forced out the name. Ethan Rowe. The room went dead still. Aiden's mind reeled. Ethan Rowe. Malik's ex-best friend. A linebacker who'd been kicked off the team last season for fighting and suspended twice for undisclosed violations. A guy with a grudge the size of the stadium. He's back in town? Aiden whispered. Connor nodded miserably. I spotted him outside the student gym 2 days ago. He looked pissed. Like, dangerous pissed. Jenna's eyes widened. So Malik didn't tell anyone? Didn't tell me, Connor said. But I overheard part of it. Ethan was yelling about being replaced. About Malik stealing his future. Aiden clenched his jaw. Malik never wanted Ethan's downfall. They'd been inseparable once. Until the incident. Until Ethan snapped. Detective O'Donnell spoke again, each word deliberate. We checked the stadium's access logs. Someone used an unauthorized badge in the south tunnel tonight. We're pulling camera footage now. Aiden felt the weight of the revelation settle like a stone in his stomach. So you think Ethan Rowe attacked Malik? He asked. It's a strong possibility, O'Donnell said. But we're not jumping to conclusions until we see the footage. Connor shifted on the bench, wringing his hands. I didn't say anything because I wasn't sure. And I didn't want to accuse the wrong person. But when I saw the video, his voice faltered. I thought maybe it was him. Aiden studied Connor. His face was tight, terrified, but honest. Jenna leaned closer to Aiden and whispered, "This is about to blow wide open." Before Aiden could respond, a sharp knock hit the locker room door. An officer poked his head inside, holding a tablet. "Detective? We've got the footage you asked for. You're gonna want to see this." O'Donnell took the tablet and pressed play. The team huddled forward. A side angle of the south tunnel appeared, grainy but clear enough. A tall figure in a hooded sweatshirt moved toward the field entrance, keeping his head down. O'Donnell zoomed in. Aiden felt his pulse rocket. The hood slipped back just enough for a glimpse of a face. A face Aiden recognized. Not Ethan Rowe's. Someone else. Someone much closer. Jenna gasped. Coach Ramirez cursed under his breath. Aiden's heart stopped cold. It was Liam Brooks. Malik's cousin. And Aiden's former friend. The room erupted in whispers. But Aiden heard none of it. Because one horrifying thought drowned out everything. Why would Liam be sneaking into the stadium? And what had he wanted with Malik? The truth was unraveling. And now Aiden realized the betrayal was deeper than he feared. Adrian's hands shook as he followed Elijah deeper into the underground maze. The tunnels twisted like a labyrinth, reinforced by rusted steel beams and walls lined with mysterious carvings, those football play diagrams that doubled as maps, etched into stone and dirt. Every step echoed, multiplying the sound of their boots into a chorus that made the walls seem alive. "This way," Elijah whispered, leading him down a sloping corridor. "The others are below. They've been trying to signal us with the plays. That's why the parents got the texts. They wanted us to find them." Adrian's mind raced. 7 young men trapped, the storm above that shouldn't exist, and messages that turned football plays into escape routes. It was all unreal, like stepping into someone else's fevered nightmare, but Adrian could no longer deny it. Every fiber of his being screamed that this was real. They arrived at a large, reinforced door, scarred with deep scratches. Beyond it, the faint glow of lanterns flickered, casting long shadows on the concrete floor. Adrian's pulse slammed in his ears. He pushed on the heavy door, and it groaned open. Inside, the air was damp and metallic. The 7 players, Elijah, Derek, Victor, Isaiah, Malik, Aiden, and Connor, sat in a circle, hands bound with coarse ropes, eyes wide with exhaustion and terror. Each looked altered, subtly and disturbingly so, their movements jittery, as if the air around them had rewritten the rhythm of their bodies. But they were alive. For now. "Guys," Adrian called. "We're here. We'll get you out." They turned toward him, relief flickering in their eyes, but it was quickly replaced by a shared, unspoken fear. A growling hum filled the chamber. Adrian froze. Something massive stirred beneath the floor, reverberating through the metal beams. The storm above had calmed, but this underground presence felt like the storm itself had descended, compressed into shadows and steel. Then, the truth hit like a lightning bolt. Elijah whispered, barely audible. "It's not the storm, it's him. Coach Landers." Adrian blinked. The implications twisted in his mind. Landers, trusted mentor, figure of authority, had orchestrated this. The coach's texts, his warnings, even the accidental shoves and disappearances, they were all part of some grand, terrifying plan. "How? Why?" Adrian gasped. Elijah's voice trembled. "He's been experimenting. With us. With something beneath the stadium. He's been running this secret program for years, using the football team as test subjects. The plays, the maps, the disappearances, they were part of a larger experiment." Malik, his voice weak, added, "I thought it was just drills, just strategies. But no, he was studying us. Testing our limits, our instincts, even fear itself. He wanted to see how far he could push us, how we'd survive when reality itself bent around us. Aiden's stomach churned. And the storm? The messages? They were distractions, Elijah said. Manipulations. To control our perception of time, space, even our choices. He wanted to make us think the world above was breaking apart while he controlled what happened below. A metallic clang echoed from deeper in the tunnels. Lander's voice slithered through the walls, calm and cold. Curiosity will get you killed, boys. And yet? Adrian, you persist. Admirable. The room froze. Adrian's gaze swept the shadows. The faint outline of the coach appeared in the corner, tall and looming, face obscured by shadow but unmistakable. Elijah hissed, he can't know we found the map. That's how we escape. Adrian's mind raced. The maps, the plays, everything pointed to a central location beneath the 50-yard line. A hatch marked on both the diagrams and the carved walls, a way out. But Landers had predicted their every move. Every escape attempt could trigger his intervention. Adrian swallowed hard, gripping the hilt of a metal pipe he'd picked up along the corridor. We don't have a choice. We follow the map. Step by careful step, they moved toward the hatch. Each heartbeat was a drum of terror. The hum grew louder, reverberating through the concrete like the growl of some subterranean predator. The last step brought them to the red circle marked in the original map. The hatch lifted slightly under Adrian's grip. A sharp, commanding voice cut through the darkness. Stop right there. The lights flickered. Shadows shifted. And then Landers stepped fully into view, the silhouette of authority and menace blended into the cold steel of the tunnel. Adrian's voice was steady despite the fear. It ends tonight. Landers smiled, a slow, chilling curve of lips. It never ends, Adrian. Not until I choose to release you. The hatch shuddered beneath their weight. Sparks flew from a nearby conduit as the ground rumbled violently. The tunnel itself seemed to groan in protest. But the boys moved as one, each following the lines of the map they'd been sent, weaving through corridors, dodging shadows, and climbing toward the exit. Finally, with a final heave, Adrian slammed the hatch open. Light from the stadium above poured into the tunnel. The storm outside had cleared, the night serene once more. One by one, the 7 players emerged, drenched, trembling, but alive. Lander's scream echoed from the depths below, part fury, part disbelief, as the hatch sealed behind them. Sirens wailed in the distance, but for the first time in hours, reality seemed real. The team, shaken to the core, looked at each other, a silent bond formed in terror and survival. Adrian whispered, more to himself than anyone else. We made it, but some secrets, some people, should never be trusted again. And as the first responders arrived, Adrian knew the story of Raven Stadium would haunt Baltimore forever, a scandal no one would believe, yet impossible to ignore. The stadium stood silent, but beneath it, the echoes of secrets and betrayal lingered, waiting for the next curious soul.